Hey, thanks for joining us. I'm here with R.J. Hammond, Affairs Director of Government Relations. I'm Dan Stein, President of FAIR. Facebook Live. We had such a great response to our last one a couple weeks ago. That's the one where I predicted that Senator Franken was going to have to resign. And of course, if you followed the news yesterday, he's gone.
The Oracle.
The Oracle. So speaking of oracles, we've got 538 is a well-regarded polling firm. They're not that well-regarded anymore because they were wrong on Trump, Clinton. But there's some interesting findings out today, basically to the effect that Americans care about border security. Other Americans care about apparently some kind of an amnesty for some of the so-called DACA people. But the saliency factor would suggest that it's not a particularly urgent priority.
Correct.
So that leads to the very basic question. Why are we in this crisis mode where the Democrats are trying to jam the Republicans on a spending bill? They passed a continuing resolution until the 22nd of December, which of course means the Democrats will continue to have this view that any shutdown that they cause is going to somehow be blamed on the Republicans.
Correct.
So what's the urgency?
Well, there is no urgency, Dan. I mean, when it comes down to spending bills, it's all about leverage. And Democrats believe that if you get Republicans close to Christmas on the 22nd, that they could kind of ram something through, and then what Republicans normally wouldn't be okay with during the rest of the year, they'll want to go home for Christmas, and then they'll be okay with it. It's just strictly a leverage thing. And as we know, President Trump put a deadline in March for DACA when the first work permits start expiring. But right now, it's all just a leverage game. There is no urgency for this. And again, as you mentioned, with the 538 numbers, DACA is ranked 12 out of 15 issues tested. Even among Democrats, only 20% said renewing DACA is a high priority. So a lot of people believe that DACA is not a priority to shut the government down over.
So you have to ask yourself, at a time when border security and all the things that Trump campaigned on ought to be front and center, why would the Republicans, anyone in the Republican Party, consider passing a so-called clean amnesty bill?
No, it makes no sense. There are so many other things that need to be done first. I mean, you need to secure the border, you need to restore interior enforcement, and then you need to make
chain migration.
And of course, you need to make fundamental changes to our legal immigration system, with first being ending chain migration, getting rid of the diversity visa lottery. There's many things that need to be done first. DACA shouldn't even be a priority. Once you do everything else first, then maybe they can touch that down the line.
All right, I'm getting ready to carve up my Christmas turkey. I got it in the oven. It's December 22nd. All of a sudden, we hear a deal is cut. Kaufman from Colorado. You have these two factions in Congress. Some of the senators involved to come up with a proposal. Lindsey Graham actually suddenly discovered chain migration is a problem. I mean, we've always said that chain migration in the context of any kind of an amnesty program underscores the fact that chain migration is a no-brainer. The head of USCIS just confirmed, Francis Cisna, just said the other day, he had a great op-ed in The Hill. He said, hey, you got to cut chain migration and we got to lose the lottery. Now, the lottery is not in the senator's proposal, but this last-minute brinkmanship that Senators Grassley and a coalition, which includes, by the way, Perdue and Cotton.
Correct.
Any chance the Dems are going to be willing to accept that?
Likely not. If any DACA action, in my eyes, gets done before the holidays and in a spending bill, it's just going to be DACA by itself. Any package like the Secure Act that we'll get into in a little bit that was just introduced. But to circle back real quick.
Trump would sign that.
Trump would sign that, I believe so. But just to circle back to this.
Basically all of us would want to carve Trump up like a Christmas turkey. No. I mean, are you going to accept the idea of a clean so-called DACA amnesty in exchange for nothing?
Well, we have to
I'm asking you all out there.
Republicans.
We're not going to accept
Republicans are normally the first people to blink when it comes to these spending fights. I've been through them before. You've been through them before. But in this scenario, finally, right now, and this is on you guys to hold everybody accountable, you have Mitch McConnell saying the right thing. You have Paul Ryan saying the right thing.
You have Lindsey Graham.
Lindsey Graham going into chain migration. But
which bothers me because I don't like it when he says
But what you have is you have all congressional leadership is united on the front that, hey, we're not going to deal with DACA in a spending bill. Number one, you make a fundamental change to U.S. immigration laws. You do it in front of the American people through the regular process. You don't ram it into a must-pass spending bill. And also, Democrats like to say this is such a popular idea and everything. If it's so popular, why do you have to ram it through in the dead of night on December 22nd?
That's what the 538 poll here suggests, that if the Democrats are going to shut down the government, basically put a lot of American citizens out of work, maybe people who've been here for 15, 20 years, generations, maybe 10 generations, fought the Civil War, fought the War of Independence, fought the Second World War, Guadalcanal, right? Omaha Beach. You're going to shut down the government, take away these checks, take away these jobs for who? Illegal aliens, people who came here illegally, brought here illegally if they were younger. You're going to do all that? You're going to shut down the government for people who don't even have a right to be in the country? I mean, where's the political savvy in this? Is Trump setting up the Democrats? Chuck and Nancy?
No, I don't believe that he is. But to your point, again, it's almost like, open borders advocates and the DACA recipients as they're chanting in the Capitol, what do we want? Clean Dream Act. If we don't get it, shut down, they're yelling. They're basically holding the essential functions of the U.S. government hostage. And, the American people won't stand for it. If the Democrats choose to go down this path and shut down, again, the essential functions of our government over an amnesty for illegal aliens, they will pay.
It's kind of interesting. We heard a lot of noise about the Trump travel ban earlier this year. A lot of media, Trump's travel ban. Basically, the ACLU and sympathetic judges enjoying the travel. This is really extreme vetting, just trying to protect the American people. Supreme Court gave him a victory. I think Joan from Boston, love your questions coming in here. Joan from Boston says, what does that Supreme Court decision mean? Does it actually mean? I mean, and what are Trump's and frankly the enemies of border control? What are they likely to do next? What do you think the travel now that it's been lifted, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean,
it moves forward, goes
right.
back to the Ninth
This is
Circuit.
the first time that one of his travel bans, if you will, if that's what the media is calling them, is able to be fully implemented again. And this is
it's a good sign the Supreme Court let it go forward, right?
Correct.
Just
They're
two
sending
justices said.
Correct. They're sending a message to the lower courts right now that this is likely to succeed on the merits if it gets to that point.
By the way, that's what Fair said on CNN on January the 2nd.
Correct. And again, this travel freeze, if you will, is a little bit different. It includes the original countries, but also adds North Korea, Venezuela, and Chad. But again, this is, I guess, the order.
You wouldn't want to leave Chad hanging.
Of course. But this is one that has been, completely through multiple rounds of kind of internal back and forth, and it is the tightest one yet. And again, we've discussed this many times before. The president is operating under the authority that he has in the INA to exclude any class of aliens that he wants if he believes there's a national security issue at hand.
So Andrew from Colorado, Andrew, I got your question here. He wants to know, how can these lower courts hold the Trump administration in such contempt, that they're ignoring the law, just kind of making it up? And, I know we're not all members of the bar here, but,
right.
What goes on where these judges are substituting their own personal views for what not only the plain black letter of the law says, but a couple of hundred years of precedent?
Mm-hmm. Well, anytime Trump does anything on immigration, they just go to Judge Watson in Hawaii and he gives them what they want, regardless of the president's authority that is given to him under the INA. I guess it's just a new thing for Trump.
DHS has some new numbers out on enforcement, and there's some great news to be shared. The DHS has actually reinvigorated interior enforcement. Not surprisingly, the word's going out. Border security is improved. That means apprehensions are going down. And the other good news, the big noise, interior apprehensions are going up. And not surprisingly, our deportation process is overloaded. But did I miss any key points on that?
No, you don't. Again, we are led by Acting Director Thomas Homan at ICE. We are enforcing the law in the interior of the United States. We are sending a message to people that want to come here illegally that you will be targeted for enforcement. Right here, ICE arrest.
Homan seems like the real deal.
He's
the new
real
ICE
deal.
director. He just got confirmed. And if you've seen him on Fox News, he's talking the real deal. So R.J. Hammond likes Homan. We like
Close.
Homan.
No, but again, ICE arrests up 40% this time over last year. Again, they've apprehended more than 301,000 illegal aliens at the border. And, this is a good thing right now, too. Again, under the Obama administration, all they tried to do was kind of hide their statistics, how many people they were actually arresting. And now, pursuant to one of President Trump's initial executive orders, we're seeing this data. We can see the effects that these new policies are having both at the border and in the interior of the United States.
I think it's very important for folks who have questions about why they would consider DACA. Right now, as we speak, there are lots of illegal aliens who are lobbying Capitol Hill. They're out there demonstrating. And if you're a DACA person, you're still basically an alien who's here illegally, who simply had the proceedings suspended. DACA is not an affirmative immigration benefit. Nobody made a promise. But they're out here lobbying our members of Congress. But on top of that, you have these various industry groups. You have tech firms, Silicon Valley firms. You have this thing called the Americans New Economy, Immigrants for New Economy. It's a Bloomberg organization that's doing these lobby days. You have the immigration lawyers. They're all over Capitol Hill. All this money, all this clout. You are the only thing. You, the American people, fair groups like us, we're the only ones, not that many of us, by the way, but there's an army of us all across the country that can stop this and push this thing into next year. We will be in a very high leverage position in 2018. As you can see right now, and you can tell from the polling, many of the Senate Democrats who are running for re-election in 2018, the Senate Democrats running for re-election in 2018, they are not on board shutting down the government, and that's why Chuck and Nancy, why Schumer's having to equivocate on the question of the shutdown threat. This, he believes, and they believe, would hurt their election chances in 2018. Very important to keep up the pressure. It's very important to understand. You can confirm this, RJ. You go up there, the halls are filled with people lobbying Congress, people who have no right to be in the country. It should offend the sensibilities of every American who cares about our system of democracy.
No, and I want to give everybody watching a homework assignment, if you will. When we end this Facebook Live right here, call your representative, call your senator. You tell them no DACA amnesty in his spending bill. Again,
no DACA amnesty,
no DACA amnesty, period. But right now, the ask is the spending bill. Once the spending bill, that will need to be passed by the 22nd to avert a government shutdown, once that is in the rear view, our leverage, if you will, increases tenfold.
I mean, the question is it really... Is there any evidence at all that Democrats are negotiating in good faith? I mean, we've got a whole agenda that we think ought to be passed before anyone even talks about something like DACA. It ought to be passed, signed by the president. Yeah. You want to talk about a grandfathering in a small number of people? We're not all so unreasonable, but in the end, without putting in Trump's major priorities in place first, congressional leadership has no business entertaining DACA.
Right. Let's remember this, though. Again, remember, President Trump on the campaign trail, was on his website, he said it in many speeches. He was supposed to rescind DACA on day one. The fact that we're not there is a sign of, I guess, generosity by him, if you will. The fact that Democrats are demanding a clean DREAM Act, which, just to tell everybody out there, the DREAM Act and DACA are two very different things. DACA covers about 600,000, 700,000 enrollees. DREAM Act, 3.5 million.
Yeah, but the Democrats won't be happy with that. They want the whole enchilada.
Of course.
They want 8 million, 10 million illegal aliens in there. And that's why eliminating chain migration is so important. Amnesty is a bad idea, but it's a really bad idea if you're going to enfranchise all their relatives.
Of course.
We talk a lot about the RAISE Act. This is the Cotton-Purdue bill that would cut chain migration and put in a merit system, limit the size of the flow, increase skills composition. Now people are talking about the SECURE Act. Okay, so I want you to slow down as we wrap this up. Help people understand, what does the RAISE Act have to do with the SECURE Act? Why is a SECURE Act suddenly being talked about now when we've been talking about the RAISE Act for the last 4 months?
Well, again,
slow down and tell them very slowly what's going on here. The RAISE Act was the original vehicle.
Correct.
And some of it got folded into something called the SECURE Act just a few days ago.
Yeah. Well, the SECURE Act is meant as something that does address the DACA population as well as enact other meaningful reforms.
It's a deal.
It is a deal.
You give our side a lot of things we want, and we'll talk to you about a DACA thing.
It's the first.
It's also an evidence of testing whether there's Democrat resolve to actually negotiate in good faith.
Right. No, again, this is the first most sensible framework of addressing the DACA population and doing other things as well. As Dan said, number one, it takes the component from the RAISE Act that ends chain migration. Again, that is huge. It must be done.
Well, it's absolutely essential.
Of course it is. And then as well, also it targets sanctuary cities, withholds funding from sanctuary cities. Again, obviously with the Kate Steinle tragedy.
I'm sorry, the murder for which there was no conviction.
Correct.
And they couldn't even get a manslaughter.
Absolutely.
An outrage, right? This wasn't a murder. Guy's here illegally, not supposed to be in the country, multiple deportations, multiple legal reentries. He's got a gun. He fires the gun. Ricochets or not. Apparently the charging document said he had to be brandishing the document. So apparently, brandishing the gun. Apparently, if Kate Steinle didn't get to see the gun and go, hey, wow, he's got a gun, before she got shot, this guy's not guilty of murder.
Right. So again, it includes.
So you would think the strength of the public outrage on this whole Kate Steinle thing would basically put DACA to bed. We wouldn't be talking about it right now.
Correct, and we shouldn't, honestly. Again, this bill does include Kate's Law. It includes another sanctuary city bill that withholds federal grant funding. It also, cuts down on asylum fraud and other things at the border as well. And then it kind of strengthens E-Verify. But here's kind of
But it doesn't make it mandatory.
yes,
and
again,
Lamar Smith doesn't agree with that. And
right.
why, after all this time, do we still want to be accepting voluntary
This is the
E-Verify?
first sensible framework off the bat. It has a lot to be improved, as you said.
Don't you think it's just it's a test balloon to see if the Democrats will negotiate at all?
And again,
if the Democrats won't negotiate at all, why should the Republicans do anything but try to push Trump's agenda?
And I mean, I feel like after the spending bill, that's what is going to happen. But again, obviously, everybody calls this poison pills off the bat. They dismiss this clean Dream Act only. The Democrats need to understand they don't have any leverage here. Okay, the American people demanded the reforms that that President Trump ran on. They did not vote for a DACA amnesty.
All right, so what we say here is that Senator Durbin, who's been the point person negotiating for the Democrats, is not negotiating in good faith, not willing to give Trump anything, much less the important things that we all think are important, even in exchange for a limited DACA temporary relief, maybe 3-year work permit. Not acceptable. Your voices need to be heard now. RJ, I really appreciate you joining me. We'll keep you updated as we move through this, and for all you getting ready for your holiday preparations, we just want to say, don't celebrate yet, because we're going to be back with you soon with some more top intel, inside information, and what you can do to help save the future of our country. Thanks so much.
Thank you.